Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at section 3.2 in Math 1033. And this section has a different collection. We're solving for certain variables in an equation that has more than one. We're going to do some application problems. So I'm going to do this in several videos. But let's start with the first question. If I'm asked to find the slope of the line whose equation is given by 2x plus 3y equals 12, the first thing you need to realize is the equation is not in slope-intercept form. In other words, to find the slope, we need to solve for y and put it in the correct form, the y equals mx plus b form. So my first step will be to subtract 2x from both sides. That will result in 3y equals the opposite of 2x plus 12. And then to finish, I divide everything by 3. So this becomes a y. Negative 2x becomes negative 2/3 x, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 4 is the correct form of the equation. Now don't stop there, because the question said what is the slope of the line. Once an equation of a line has been written in the form y equals mx plus b, the slope is always the number in front of the x. So the correct answer, m equals negative 2/3. Next question. It's a two-part question. Part 1, what is the formula for the area of a triangle? And then part 2, solve this formula for the letter B. Alright, the formula for an area of a triangle, area equals 1/2 base times height. Again, you see the phrase there, memorize this. It's one of your formulas that you need to know. Now, if you're solving this equation for the letter B, the first thing you should do is use the LCD, which is 2, the least common denominator, and multiply both sides of this equation by 2. When you multiply the left-hand side by 2, it becomes 2a. When you multiply the right-hand side by 2, the 2 times 1/2 cancels, becoming a 1, and we're left with BH. 2a equals BH. And now to finish this process, to solve for b, we undo multiplication. We divide both sides of the equation by h. b equals 2a over h, or divided by h. All right. What is the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle? So there's one question. And then the second question is solve this formula for the letter L. Now I've drawn a rectangle here for you. The width I've labeled with the letter W, the length obviously with the letter L. Remember what perimeter is. Perimeter asks you to walk around the object, virtually the perimeter of the yard, and add together all the dimensions you see. So P equals 2L plus 2W. You really don't need to memorize it so much as you need to know what perimeter means. Walk around the entire outside of the diagram and add up the dimensions. If I'm solving this for L, to get the L alone, I'm going to get the 2W out of the way by subtracting. So I have, and of course that's to both sides, P minus 2W equals 2L. And my final step here is to divide by 2. When I divide by 2 here, I have L. When I divide this side by 2, I have P minus 2W all over 2. Now, here, you cannot cancel the 2's because of that minus. However, if you separate this into two fractions where you have P over 2 as one fraction, minus 2W over 2 is another fraction, if you write them as separate fractions, you will then be able to reduce, and the 2's will cancel out of the back fraction, leaving you with this form of the answer. So if you want to cancel out the 2's, you have to separate in order to do it, but you're not mandated to do that. Both answers are considered to be correct, and both answers are considered to be in lowest terms. We have the equation 7 times the quantity 2x minus 5y equals 2x. We are asked to solve for x. Well, the first thing we're going to do is distribute the 7. 7 times 2x will result in 14x. 7 times a negative 5y is a negative 35y, and this is equal to 2x. Okay, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get the x's on the left and move the y's over on the right. I'm solving for x. So the negative 35y on the other side becomes 35y. When I subtract 2x, 14 minus 2x is 12x. To finish, when I divide by 12, I have x is equal to 35y divided by 12. And another way to write this, recognize that the 35 over 12 could be written as a fraction in front of the letter y. They both mean the same thing. Okay, for example, if you write, think about this, if you wrote x over 2, that would be the same as writing 1/2 x. Alright. Okay, let's look at these two equations, and then I'll go on to another video. If I have the equation s equals 2 pi rh, and I want to solve for h, notice that the h here is being multiplied by 2 pi r. Well, to undo multiplication, I use the inverse operation, which is division. I divide both sides of the equation by 2 pi r. S divided by 2 pi r is equal to h. So it's pretty simple. Division, because we're undoing multiplication. And the last example I'm going to do on this video, the LCD in this equation would be 3. So I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by 3 to clear fractions. On the left-hand side, the 3's cancel, leaving me with 2a, or rather 2 plus 5a plus b. On the right-hand side of the equation, 8 times 3 becomes 24. Now, since we're trying to solve for a, we need to get rid of this 2 and this b, and we're going to do that by subtracting 2 and b from both sides of the equation. So 5a by itself is equal to 24 minus 2 minus b. 5a is equal to, when I collect like terms, I have 22 minus b, and my final step here will be division. Divide everything through by 5, and I have my answer, 22 minus b over 5 is equal to a. And that will be my section 3.2 part 1 video, and I'll continue with the rest of this unit in other videos.